Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this next webcast. My name's Leon Cox. I'm General Manager Membership of Governance Institute, and it's a real pleasure to have a panel of esteemed guests with me this afternoon to discuss what Governance Institute offers in the postgraduate space. So by way of introductions, I have with me a fellow General Manager of Governance Institute, Mr. Mark Wilbourn, who's General Manager of Education. I also have with us Lidia Xynas. So Lydia's a course director with Governance Institute and helps with the delivery of our legal subjects in our postgraduate courses, but also wears a few other hats, and one of those is Associate Professor at Victoria University in the role of Deputy Dean, Director of Teaching and Learning. And so we're very fortunate to have Lidia with us today. And we also have a past student in Hasaka Martin. So Hasaka actually works in quite an interesting role with Boardroom Ltd Australia. Its title is Company Secretary, but it should actually probably be a plural of that, because he's Company Secretary to a variety of companies and aids them in delivering governance services and all that they need. So we'll hear a little bit more from Hasaka in a few moments' time. Today I thought what would cover is a little bit about the postgraduate offering of Governance Institute, and I suppose why people are interested in our courses and where it can take them into their career. So I might start off with a question to you, Mark, and I'd be interested in you outlining our postgraduate offering and what it leads to. Over to you.
Okay, thanks, Leon. First thing to say really is that we offer our subjects fully online, and they can be studied in a variety of different ways. They can be studied either as standalone subjects or as part of a postgraduate course. We also offer the option to undertake the learning without the assessments for those wanting to simply update their knowledge. The course that we offer is a graduate diploma of applied corporate governance and risk management, with an option to step off with a graduate certificate. The graduate certificate is foundational, with 4 10-credit subjects in law, governance, finance, and risk and compliance. And what this course does, it equips the student with the ability to firstly conceptualize knowledge of the theories and principles related to the legal regulation of governance and risk and compliance and appropriate strategic approaches. Secondly, to critically appraise and apply corporate governance principles, as well as best practices in risk management for the board of organizations. Thirdly, to identify and critically evaluate sources of finance with their associated risks and returns. And finally, to evaluate the impact of corporate conduct, behaviors, and culture on risk and compliance management practices. The graduate diploma then goes on to offer one of 2 pathways. The first pathway is the qualifying program for membership of the Chartered Governance Institute, which is an international organisation of which Governance Institute is the Australian division. And with that is the opportunity to use the designation Chartered Secretary. In order to complete the graduate diploma, you need to undertake a further 2 10-credit subjects. And in this pathway, those are in corporate accountability and development of strategy. By undertaking these subjects, you will additionally gain the ability to exercise appropriate judgment to advise the board on the expectations of and compliance with regulatory legal requirements. The second pathway, again, is a qualifying program for membership of the Chartered Governance Institute and the ability to use the designation Chartered Governance Professional. Again, it's 2 10-credit subjects, this time in enterprise risk management, and either risk management project or the development of strategy as an elective subject. And by undertaking these subjects, you'll gain be able to critically apply methods for the development, enhancement, and sustainment of robust risk culture, supported by enterprise risk management. If you've undertaken similar study in the past and can demonstrate that you've met the subject learning outcomes for 1 or 2 of our subjects, you can apply for advanced standing in the course. More details on how you do that are on our website at governanceinstitute.com.au.
Fantastic, Mark. I think a couple of key points there. You're talking about recognition of both a qualification as a registered higher education provider, but also a global designation. So creates lots of opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Now I might pose the question to one of our course directors who helps with the delivery of this education. So Lidia, I've mentioned in your introduction, you help us with delivery of the legal subjects, but how does the content actually aid people with applying what they've learnt back to their place of work?
Yes, thank you, Leon. Yes, I do teach two of the legal subjects, applied corporate law and corporate accountability meetings and disclosure. Both of these subjects focus heavily on relevant legislative provisions and case law that company secretaries and others in their roles in their company need to be aware of so that they can ensure that the appropriate corporate governance and legal compliance aspects for their corporations that they're working for are met. So, for example, in the applied corporate law subject, there's a significant focus on directors' duties under the Corporations Act of 2001, Commonwealth, and we focus very much on that particular act, but also on case law. And we look at other areas like shareholders' rights, meeting requirements, including annual general meetings. And, you know, if I look at the corporate accountability meetings and disclosure subject, there's a significant focus on ASX listing requirements for public companies. And we also deal with issues when we're dealing with ASIC, intellectual property issues, all of these types of things that people like company secretaries should be aware of so that they can properly advise their board when needed. And so the content of both of these subjects really does aid people when they are working in their workplace. So they're better equipped with this underpinning knowledge of what they do and why they do it. And a lot of my students will know what is right, but they don't know why it's right. And we give them that underpinning knowledge. And this way they're in a stronger position to actually advise their board of what the laws are, what ASIC requirements are, what ASX listing requirements are. And so I would suggest that in both of these subjects, they come away with very, very valuable knowledge about regulatory requirements, compliance, good corporate governance practices, and it's this that makes them very valuable employees in their workplace.
And I think that building of trust amongst the board and their fellow executives is quite important. And if they're able to really emphasize that advisory element when they're being asked a question, they're able to respond and provide guidance, that helps with effective decision making. So and what I'm hearing saying that you're able to enable better outcomes through some of those conversations.
That's exactly right, Leon. Absolutely. And I always say knowledge is power. And, this is something that students can take away from these legal subjects.
Thank you. I'll now turn to Hasaka and ask him some questions around why you chose our postgraduate course and how did it assist with your career as a chartered secretary?
So in terms of why I chose it, I was thrown into a role as a company secretary, as most people are, and I knew enough to realise I wasn't completely well equipped to do my job. Yeah. So I thought the best way to do this is go and do the GIA course. At that stage, and it still is, if you're a company secretary, it is the gold standard. It's the course you have to do. And of course, not knowing anything, I went and did it. Right. So the real drivers initially were like, one, it's a recognised qualification, and also to get the skills that I thought I was missing. Mm-hmm. What I discovered, so how it benefited me afterwards was, yes, I got the gold standard, and yes, I got skills I was missing, but they're important, and they're important for jobs, but the real value that I got out of it comes back to what Lidia was talking about, was in a board meeting, not just sitting there and being reactive, you become proactive in dealing with situations, and you learn to recognise risk a lot quicker. And that's particularly important for boards, is being able to say, look, this is a risky area. You need to get expert advice. You may not be the person giving the advice, but you know when it's appropriate to get advice,
Yeah.
Particularly legal advice, or it may even be working out, getting an independent person to do a board performance exercise. So you start to recognise what's wrong and when that sort of skills are needed. That was pretty important. So the second thing, so adding real value was the first one. The second thing is probably more, I developed a network in doing the course, a really good network of other company secretaries, which was like a resource that helped me in doing my job and still does.
Yep.
I still pick up the phone and ask a question to someone I went through that course with, who's worked in a different area, and I can get that access to that sort of information. The third thing is more around a lifetime learning. So it's sort of switched on that thing where what we deal with as COSECs always changes. The legislation always changes, how we analyse risk changes, all these things change. And it sort of brought me back to the learning skills you use, you have to keep using them in your career. And that's an important thing. So when you're a chartered secretary, there's this thing where you have to get points effectively. There's this requirement to keep learning. So it's sort of bringing you into this lifetime learning cycle. You're always learning. So that's sort of my summary of what I get out of the course.
Fantastic. And as I mentioned at the outset, you're in quite a privileged position of being involved with a number of boards. So I would imagine that you're able to really get a good appreciation of how things are happening and what are some of the trends and themes. So I see that as quite an exciting role, and one that's quite unique. So that's what the course enabled.
Yeah, it did. It's sort of, it prepared me for this role. It was an important part of the preparation for this type of role. And I think it also comes down to, it's the start of that lifetime learning journey. Is you need to start somewhere, and it's the perfect place to start.
Yep.
So that was my view. And it draws out, sort of times like these draw out your knowledge of director's duties as a company secretary, your knowledge of disclosure. They come to the fore at this time, particularly when there's like slight changes to the legislation around insolvency and all these things that have substantial effects on how boards decide things and what they can actually do and what they couldn't do 6 months ago. So doing the course enabled me to go down that path to understand it. And it was like a foundation for all of that.
Fantastic. Very good. We've got a few more minutes, so I might pose one more question. I'll start with you, Hasaka, but then I'll open it up for the other panel members to answer. What does Governance Institute, the course, what does it offer that others don't out there in the marketplace? What makes it unique?
To me, it draws sort of expertise from different fields that you don't normally get with a postgraduate degree. So I'm nearly finished a postgraduate degree, a master's in commercial law. So that's very different from the GIA grad dip, which was GIA grad dip grabbed some commercial law, some sort of finance, a little bit of risk, and brought it all together. So it brought those sort of three professions together to give you like a summary of all of those and the important points of all of those. And it gives you that ability to recognise when something's a legal risk, or understand what a balance sheet means, or understand what an income statement means, and all those sort of things are important for you to do your job as a company secretary. You're not there to sit there and write things down, take minutes. You're there to proactively participate in a board meeting, and understanding those things is what you need to proactively participate.
I might just sum that up, Hasaka, because all of those areas I would see as key to a successful executive. So those skill sets would apply if you're in an executive role, in a finance role or legal role, to have a good holistic understanding of those requirements.
Yeah.
Great. Any other comments from Mark or Lydia around that one?
I'd just like to add, with the approach that I take and others, other course directors, we also have assisting us in our teaching practitioners who will come in and give a practical aspect to the materials that we're actually presenting. And we always finish off our sessions with a practical exercise as well. So applying what we've learnt, applying the rules, the regulations, so under the Act, under case law, perhaps the ASX listing rules, to a particular type of problem-based question. And we do that so that it gives a little bit of, I always call it colour to what we're actually doing. Because, when you're reading legislation, it can be very black and white, very grey. But with problem-based questions, with practitioners working with us, the course directors, we give colour to the course. That doesn't happen in many of the other university-style courses. And we can also draw from each other as well. So myself working with the practitioners and our very experienced students that we have, most of them are postgraduate, well, they all are postgraduate students, and most of them are already working in the workplace in very high, highly regarded positions, and we bring all of that to the course as well. So that makes it very practically focused.
Look, I wanted to thank you all for your time this afternoon, and if anyone has any more questions or interest in Governance Institute, there's a huge volume of resources on our website, which is governanceinstitute.com.au. And there's people around the country who'd be happy to have a chat to you if you've got any further questions by phone or email or through our website. So we look forward to maybe seeing one or two at our virtual stand, and be happy to take some questions there as well. And wish you all the best for the remainder of the afternoon. Thank you.